there, Mandy Friedman here, licensed professional clinical counselor, clinically certified domestic violence counselor, clinically certified trauma professional, and the creator of SNAP, Survivors of Narcissistic and Abusive Personalities. We are back today talking about my favorite character from the show Succession on HBO, Tom Wambsgans, Season 3, and we're here with my brother, Andrew. Hi, Andrew.
Hello, Mandy, and hello to everybody out there watching and listening. I'm excited to talk about Tom. Season 3 of HBO's Succession. Shiv and Tom start the season with an awkward conversation about power. Which one of them is going to be in power?
So what's happening right now is we know that Logan is probably going to go down for some crimes. They need to have someone big to take the hit for the crimes that have taken place with Waystar Royco. So they're going to have someone step in as a figurehead, and they're trying to figure out who that is. Well, Shiv's not in the meeting, but Tom is. But he's calling back and forth to Shiv to report in. And she's trying to encourage him, like, you know, go for it, get in there and, you know, be a mover, be a shaker. And she says, do you want it? Do you want the role? And he's like, wait, who, me? No, of course not. Absolutely not. It should be you. She tells him to get in there and hustle, baby. And he's playing the reverse banjo, telling Logan his view of who he thinks should be the CEO interim. And it's not him, but we all know what happens, because you're supposed to have already watched the whole show by now. We know what happens. So it's just interesting in these moments where he's like, oh, no, I don't want power. Not me.
We'll talk about it more later in the episode about some of the perceptions on watching the show the first time versus watching it, you know, in the future, another time when you know who wins the game of Succession, in the end. But yes, you know, Tom backs Shiv because of course he's going to back Shiv in this situation. Tom intimidates Greg. We have a lot of great interactions between Greg and Tom, and some of them are going to be in Greg episodes and some are going to be in Tom episodes. But this one is great. Greg is getting intimidated by Tom, and he's trying to extract information from Greg about Kendall, but he uses a lot of weird, strange kind of phrases and words to do this.
He says, do you like to do your house chores in the nude? Like, what? It's just, he just says the most bizarre things, but it's disarming. You know, this is a form of bullying where you just make someone feel really uncomfortable. And he says, Logan is very interested in what you're up to. You don't come home to us and you're going to end up in a work camp. Logan is going to fire 1 million poisonous spiders down your dickie. You better find an animal corpse to crawl into and hide. It works. Greg shares that Shiv is at Kendall's right now. So these are the transactional relationships. He's saying, give me information. I'm threatening you. We're all going to come and get you. Logan's pissed at you. And it works. Greg gives up the info.
Greg also is uncomfortable with the things that Tom says. And I think that's another part of it, is that Tom's saying to him, I'm going to keep making you feel uncomfortable right now if you don't give me something. So he's like, listen, I don't want to hear about, a vacuuming in the nude. Okay. So here, Shiv's here. So it's pretty great. I love that. Now, Tom has this issue still hanging over his head, and that is that he's going to go to prison. He's stepping up for Logan.
Tom comes into Greg's office and yells, FBI! to scare him. It's hilarious. Then he jokingly lays a couple of pills on his desk, saying that Logan wants us all to take these cyanide pills, the whole team. I mean, he's really scaring Greg. Like we're all going to dose ourselves with cyanide just to get out of, the things that are coming after us.
He's not sure if Tom's serious or not sometimes, because we've seen Boar on the floor. We know crazy shit happens when Logan says jump. So Tom has this thing hanging over his head the whole season, and that is that, he might have to go to prison, and it seems pretty likely that he's going to. So he's meeting with lawyers to find out some information, and he, in fact, finds out some bad news about the whole prison thing, but he kind of can spin it a little bit, Tom is the king of spin, as we're going to learn.
He's the king of spin, and he's adaptable. He did speak to outside counsel, and they confirmed that there's a high likelihood that he will go to prison. And so now he's trying to think about how he can turn this loss into a win. How can this benefit him?
He walks up to Logan and offers himself to Logan straight up. He says that he will not wriggle.
This is a really good strategy to take a win from a no-win. Shiv seems to like the idea and calls it genius. But then she's like, no, you can't do that. You know, she's like, actually, that sounds fantastic. Maybe you should offer yourself up. But, oh, don't do it.
Well, because she doesn't want him to go to prison.
But then Tom does approach Logan and he says, I'll step up and go down. I won't wriggle. Logan says, that's it? You don't want anything? And Tom says, nope. Just clunk the trout on the head and put it in your pouch. Logan seems genuinely touched and appreciative. They exchange a loving glance.
We have a big corporate dinner at ATN, and Tom gives a speech, and he is just a master of spin. He does even more spinning in the speech. He won't stop spinning.
He's charming people with the spin moves that he has. Tom is really great at reframing things. He has a way of spinning the narrative in a very charming and almost harmless way. He severely minimizes things and softens them. Like a sponge, he removes the gravity and intensity from his communication style, so it always sounds like everything is A-okay. He kindly informs them that the FBI is raiding Waystar, so if you see them, that's what it is. Like, oh, that's nothing. It's that drama over there. That's not real drama. It's just a thing that's happening, and that's what it is. If you see it, that's what it is.
Shiv appears at Tom's office and orders him to use his spin talents to attack the president because the president's not helping them with their investigation. He's got other more important things to do. And she also orders him to get Greg on side.
So when she comes into the office and says, you know, you need to start attacking the president so that he'll do what we want him to do, Tom pushes back and says it doesn't really look good for him to be taking orders from her, considering the situation. He tries to talk his way out of it, but she wins the convo by pulling rank and literally orders him and instruct the right-wing ATN host to target the president, and then, like you mentioned, get Greg on side. That's her list of demands and orders, and he submits and agrees.
There's a big shareholder meeting, and we've discussed this meeting at length. This is where Logan has his piss-mad situation, but we haven't talked about who Logan trusted in the situation. Who did he look to, you know, when he was in this state of mind where it's like his subconscious was ruling him at this time, right? He's lashing out. He's acting like a child in a lot of ways, like a baby would. And when he is in this situation, who does he trust?
He says, you, because he can't think of names. You know, he's his executive functioning and recall, things are not working in his brain, but he knows enough to go you and point at Tom. And he wants Tom to take him to the bathroom and help him in the bathroom. Now, remember that Tom and Logan had this very nice exchange about Tom going to jail for him and not expecting anything in return. More and more, Tom is becoming someone that Logan trusts. Logan is talking about having the FCC shut down the shareholder meeting. He's asking about the president. He needs to go to the bathroom again. Asks Tom to take him. And while they're in there, Logan is struggling. He's struggling in the bathroom. This is a man that won't take his shirt off in front of people because he doesn't want them to see the scars on his back. So he only swims in front of one of his wives. You know, he does not get vulnerable. And here he is as an older adult in the bathroom needing help, and he lets Tom help him. Let me say also that he lets Tom help him without barking at him. Mm-hmm. He's not being nasty to Tom. He looks at Tom with kindness and says, thanks, son. And Tom says, no problem, Pop.
It's so sad.
Like what?
So sad, because we see how Logan treats his actual children, and it's disgusting. And the guy that isn't even his kid, that's why he feels safe with him, because he's not his child.
It is really sad, because what you're seeing here is you're seeing a moment of vulnerability that Logan is in a weakened state and vulnerable, and he's not in a very dignified position either.
He's humiliated.
Yeah, I mean, this would be humiliating for him, for people to see him this way. And it's Tom that he wants there with him, and he knows that Tom doesn't want anything from him, or at least he believes that Tom doesn't want anything from him. With his kids, power and a power struggle, power dynamics, that's a love language with his children. It's almost like that he was raised in a way that he believes that in order to be a parent, you have to dominate and control in this authoritarian way of your children, like that they're objects or dogs that need to be trained. So he doesn't have a good relationship with them because of that. So they don't have these kinds of genuine loving moments. And notice when they do, the kids are always very suspicious. The kids always look at Logan like, did that? Okay, whatever. Like they don't believe it. And then when they're nice to each other, they don't believe it either. And Tom doesn't believe it either. We're going to hear about him at Kendall's birthday party here in a few minutes and how he deals with a similar situation when the shoe's on the other foot. It's true that Logan prefers Tom at this point, but Tom's the one that got himself here. He has navigated this situation, this circumstance, and these relationships so stealthily and so cunningly that Logan Roy wants him to hold his dick in the bathroom.
What a moment. Well, we discussed this a little bit on the Shiv episode, but there is a situation where Shiv just gets absolutely belittled and demeaned by Logan in public in like the office situation, and it is really hard on her. And for once, she cracks. And when she cracks, Tom knows what to do. He knows how to handle this.
At the shareholder meeting incident, Shiv was the one that really pulled everybody through. She was the one that made all the right moves. And while Logan was incapacitated, Shiv stepped up and did a really fantastic job. Well, at a certain point, she wants to have a toast and she'd like to feel good about it. And she'd maybe even like for her dad to compliment her. I mean, that would be nice. But instead, Logan screams at her in front of everyone and like swats her away. I think this is when he says to her, "Quit buzzing in my ear." He treats her like she's an annoying gnat to be swatted away. Well, normally she doesn't really react that much, but you could tell this did hurt her. And Tom knew to go over and to console her. Tom knows how to read a room. He knows the social scripts. He knows how a good man is supposed to act. And in those moments, you see that this is really the savvy nature. No one else went to console anyone, but he did go to console Shiv, even though maybe he didn't feel sorry for her. He may not have felt sorry for her genuinely, but he just knows that that's the right thing, that you're supposed to do that. And nobody else in the room or the shark tank that they're in has the sense to just be kind.
Tom is very diplomatic with his spins sometimes, too. For example, he opens a new bottle of wine from their vineyard. They had their own vineyard, and here we go. We're going to try this wine, but he says he doesn't like it in a very nice way.
The king of spin knows how to make something that isn't great sound great. So the first thing he notices is that it's a screw top, not a cork. And he's like mildly disappointed, like, interesting, screw top, okay. And then he tastes it. He says it's got quite a funk to it. You kind of have to meet it halfway, right?
That's my favorite.
Siobhan's face is all squinted, and you can tell she doesn't like it. And she says, earthy, Germanic, agricultural. He opens another bottle just to see if they're all the same, and it is the same. And right after this, and you know, what they're kind of leading into is Tom's thinking that they're going to have a couples moment right now, and he's going to talk to her about his fears of going to jail. But she doesn't want to have to think about that, and she also doesn't want to have to act like she cares. So, you know, she gets irritated and she snips at him. Then he says, "I'm sorry, does the topic of my imminent imprisonment bore you?" She snaps at him again, basically the same way that Logan snaps at her. The difference between her and Logan is that all of a sudden Shiv realizes what's going on and that she's been maybe too big of a bitch and that it wasn't very nice and that she needs to backpedal. And she does.
This is when she sits on his lap to maybe, have a little transaction.
She apologizes, and as she usually does, she offers sex as a transaction to apologize. He seems tentative at first, and then he rejects her sexual advances. No, thank you. And he says to her, there's really not any point. You're still on contraception. It's just like throwing a bunch of cake batter at a brick wall. Like, that is a nasty thing for him to say. But you see that's in there. When he's being like, I don't want anything. I'll just be kind. Here, let me console you. That's the exterior. But on the interior, this is the way his brain works, is he will say something that nasty to his wife. She might deserve it a little bit. But remember when Tom grabs the piece of chicken off of Logan's plate and takes a bite of it and puts it down? It just seems bizarre. It's actually a small power move that he makes, just like this comment he makes about throwing batter at a brick wall because she's on contraception. These are countermeasures, is what we call it in the SNAP program that I mentioned at the beginning of a lot of the episodes. SNAP, Survivors of Narcissistic and Abusive Personalities. It's a psychoeducational recovery series where you can learn all about abusive personalities, targets of abuse, abusive relationships, and survivors in recovery from abuse. One of the topics we talk about is countermeasures. And whenever there's a power imbalance or there is an abusive circumstance, a lot of times the people involved or the targets that feel disempowered will do things to try to balance things out a bit. And there's all kinds of different countermeasures out there. But it's anything you would do that might also be out of character. Now, in this situation with Tom, it's not out of character. This is just Tom. But for a typical target of abuse, their countermeasures might also be something that they would never normally do in a typical relationship. Tom uses this countermeasure. And I'm not saying that he's a good person by any stretch of the imagination, but we still have to look at him objectively in terms of his skills, his ability to adapt, to pivot, to spin, and how it serves him through the series, because that's the whole point. It's called Succession, and that's what he's working towards. And he's doing really well, but we don't know that yet, right? He's generally very kind and patient with Shiv and all that is her and her family. He plays the nice guy so well. He has high EQ. That's emotional intelligence. But then you can also see his lack of empathy when the vile things come out of his mouth. When he says the really nasty things, when he uses someone as a piece of furniture, that's Tom. That's Tom. The nice guy that offers help with nothing in return, that's a little bit of a psychopath. That's somebody blending in, right? And he's so savvy in that way.
Unfortunately, Mandy, we have to go back to the Future Freedom Summit, a terrible place where they're choosing the next president. And they're all at dinner, they're sitting around a table, and Hugo gives Tom some news about prison. And you kind of, as you've been watching the show, you kind of had some thoughts about Tom in general at this point.
When Hugo gives the news, he tells everyone that the DOJ is softening and their position is weakening, and that the understanding is that no one big is going to jail, with the exception of Tom, of course. Sorry, Tom. But Tom says, no worries, it's understood. So I keep having to remind myself as I'm watching this that when I watched it the first time around, I didn't know what happens at the end, of course. But then for this series that we're making here, I've watched it multiple times now. So when I rewatch it, knowing what happens at the end, it makes Tom even more impressive. I see Tom differently. Like right now, he's being a pain sponge. He absorbs humiliations and continues to be tuned in. And while he is obsessed over jail time, he's still tuned in. He's able to multitask all these things that are happening and then have this demeanor that's approachable and trustworthy. But the first time I watched it, I thought he was somehow in a weaker position. Like I could see he was charming and cunning, but he wasn't respected. And I failed to see the strengths of endurance and fortitude or whatever it is that helps him rise to the top. I just thought he was a little bit of a bumbling, weaker person that gets shit on that nobody respects. I did not realize that that was part of his entire plan and that he's doing it all on purpose, and it's how he gets where he wants to go.
So this show is so good that as a viewer, you're pulled into the control drama of the characters. Tom is approached by Kendall to do some forced teaming, which is a form of coercive control. Another thing about watching the show a second or third time is you realize that Kendall's an idiot. You know, it's like the first time you watch it, you think, okay, yeah, he's an idiot, but I mean, maybe there's something here. Maybe he's not going to fuck up. But the second time you watch it, man, Tom dominates the situation and tells Kendall what he doesn't want to hear.
The first move that Kendall makes is he says something along the lines of, oh, you and I both know that something. That's the forced teaming. It's a manipulative strategy where you go ahead and include the other person in your view or in your purpose, or you know,
we can all agree.
We can all agree, yeah. Or come on, we can do this together. I'm with you on this, and it makes it seem like that. But Tom immediately, because Tom knows these strategies, he uses them too. He's the master of the strategies, and he catches on right away and says, "I don't think that I do know that, Ken." So you're saying we both agree, we both know something. And Tom's like, I don't know if I do know that. Right away.
That's great.
Tom says, I'm just a humble servant, Ken. But then Kendall calls him out and he starts bullying him and, you know, picking on him and hitting below the belt, saying mean things like, I admire you, man. You know, you're a long way from home. You're far from the tree. You've played your hand well, and you're sitting at the top table. But Tom is impervious to Kendall's attempts. I mean, absolutely impervious. His retort was immediate, and he says, I fell in love with your sister is what happened. Smart. That's the narrative. But I actually think that Tom does love Shiv. And I do think that he did kind of fall in love with her. I think but just like with going to jail, he finds a way to have an advantage in any situation. So we're killing several birds with that stone. Towards the end of the conversation, you know, Kendall's sort of trying to flash this agenda to Tom and saying that you can't rely on Logan. He doesn't give a shit that you hung yourself out to drive for him. And Shiv certainly doesn't have your back. And so he keeps going. So they're walking to the car and Tom says, I'll have a think. I'll think about it. Then Kendall tries another strategy and basically says the things I said before. Logan is not your lifeline. Shiv, you can't trust her either. But Tom uses logic. How does it benefit me to turn against Logan and the investment that he's made into the relationship? You know, this doesn't make any sense for him. Kendall tries another move, claiming that if he's man enough to do it, his wife will finally respect him. He just keeps going, trying to poke at him. That's going to make Tom crack. And Tom is like not having it. He's not even getting wound up at all. Then Tom really flexes here as the dominant figure. He says, I don't mean to be insulting, but which we know we're leading into something. I don't mean to be insulting, but having been around a bit, my hunch is that you're going to get fucked because I've seen you get fucked a lot and I've never seen Logan get fucked, not once. But it's the way he says it with this oh so utterly civilized manner. He almost sounds like he's being gentle with Kendall. Then Kendall is so desperate as Tom is walking away, he takes out his camera to take a picture. I guess he's going to try to use the picture to prove that they met and to continue to try to coercively control Tom. Tom doesn't react at all. Very civilized, he says, do you know what they're doing up in the suite right now? They're picking the next president. Bye-bye.
Power moves from
Yeah.
Tom.
Tom says, I still have access. I
Mhm.
still know what's going on. You don't know anything and you're not a part of the big moves. I am. See you later.
So in the back of Tom's mind also, he's looking at Kendall. Kendall doesn't get any love from Logan, but Tom does. Tom's been called his son in a private moment. Tom's literally had his dad's dick in his hands. And he's thinking that while he's saying these things to Kendall because Kendall doesn't know shit.
And and Tom also doesn't let too much information out.
Mm-hmm.
When he does strike back, he's very concise and careful with what information he hands over. So he doesn't say, well, I was helping your dad in the bathroom and he likes me better than you. Like he's not going to stoop to that. He's just smarter than that. That's what Kendall's doing right now. He's acting like a child. Tom is like, I'm a grown man. You're a little boy. I'll see you later.
You know, it's one of those fun times when we see Kendall has to eat shit a lot on the show because he loves it. It's his favorite. And so sometimes it's really sad to watch him eat shit. And sometimes it's really satisfying and awesome. And that was one of those times. We have a big meeting and Jerry reveals the amazing information that there will be no jail time. And Logan, he kind of thanks Tom.
He does. But first, it's important to note that they do a toast to justice, as if justice has been done by the charges being dropped and them getting away with all of their crimes. Justice has been done. But then Logan walks past Tom, touches his hand, and says quietly to him, I'll remember. Yeah, yes. Tom's like, ugh. I mean, he doesn't do that, of course, because Tom doesn't do that. But on the inside, Tom's thinking like, I did it.
Absolutely.
I did it.
Great moment. Great moment for Tom. Big win. And another awesome thing about the show is a big moment can be someone walking by and just going, I remember. Next, we're moving on to Too Much Birthday. And at Kendall's birthday party, Tom has some interesting thoughts on the vibe of the party.
Tom, again, has emotional intelligence and he knows how to read a room. And he makes a comment that I thought was really funny. And that is, he says, why is no one happy? And they're at this really expensive billionaire's birthday party, but no one's happy. Look at everyone's faces. This is supposed to be festive. So he notices that people are there with other agendas and it is not to celebrate Kendall's birthday.
Well, also, someone else notices that the vibe is off, and it's Kendall way later, after the plane has already crashed into the mountain. Then he notices. Tom notices right away. Kendall has all these like exhibits at his birthday party, and they're all strange. We've talked about them a little bit on the show. One of them is called the Compliment Tunnel, and you walk through it, and an actor is paid to give you compliments. Well, Tom gets really angry at one of the compliments.
Now, remember when we talked about how Tom's in the bathroom with Logan and Logan says, thanks, son. And Tom says, anytime, Pop. Like that is a very vulnerable moment. And they don't give each other compliments in the family. And if there is a tender moment between Logan and his children, the kids are very like suspicious of it. Like, oh, okay, what do you really want? What's really going on here? They can't just have a tender moment. And between the siblings, they also can't pay each other compliments. They're like, ew, stop. They don't compliment each other. A compliment is a manipulative tool, is what they believe. That if someone's complimenting you, they want something from you, they're lying to you, they're making fun of you. Tom going through the compliment tunnel, and the person giving the compliment says that Tom is full of grace. And Tom takes it the wrong way and starts like yelling at the actor, full of fucking what? Are you being sarcastic? What did you say? And Greg has to like hold him back and like, whoa, hold on. Like he's getting ready to fight the guy in the tunnel. But then Tom mentions, he's like, I did a bunch of drugs and I did them in the wrong order and it's your fault and I can't get happy.
Him and Shiv are both having a wild night. They kind of have arguments and have some problems. They just in general have a rough night with each other.
Things are getting really complicated between Shiv and Tom. because they both have their own actual goals. And as the relationship with Shiv is sort of disintegrating, Tom is having to make some decisions here because he did have his wagon hitched to Shiv. But more and more, Shiv doesn't seem like that she really has his back, and their marriage isn't looking so great. And if their marriage isn't looking so great, how does he remain connected to Logan? But the next morning, after they have this terrible night and she's weird and does weird things and hurts his feelings, she does notice that Tom seems down, and she asks him, "Are you all right?" So she notices, but then he clearly indicates that last night wasn't sitting well with him. And he lets her know that it was hurtful, but she pretty much just blows him off and gaslights him. It's just that he's looking for something here to keep him, attached to the relationship, that indications that maybe she cares about him because he believes and seems to care about her.
After they've had this argument and had these issues, Shiv tries to get Tom in on her scheme to cut Logan out completely. But Tom does something kind of unexpected.
He knows that him and Shiv are fighting. Also, she's on contraception. That would be the next step, is for her to get pregnant. That would tie him even more to Logan, because then that would be his son, Logan's grandson, and she's not having it. And so he's starting to realize more and more that Shiv is not going to be the glue that holds the pieces together between him and Logan. Shiv is planning a coup with her siblings because they find out that Logan is thinking about selling the company to Mattson of Gojo. But it's real hush-hush, and nobody knows about it. And they're doing all these stealthy moves. And Shiv, lets Tom know, hey, this is happening. And, we're going to do this. And he kind of is like, okay, all right. Yeah, of course I'm on board with you. But also, he doesn't have faith in those siblings that they can actually do what they think they're about to do. He knows, like he just said to Kendall, that they usually get fucked and Logan never gets fucked. And he really wants to be not getting fucked. He approaches Greg and he says, "There's something happening and I need to know, are you coming with me?" So essentially, he lets Greg know that there's a coup happening. And at a certain point in time, Logan is in on that this is happening, and he's got a whole room full of people working on it. They're already on top of it. There's no way the coup is going to happen. And Shiv, you see her starting to piece it together because no one told, and she knows who she told, and she realizes that the leak was Tom.
Well, that's an exciting way to end season 3. Will Tom survive? Will their relationship survive? We'll have to find out next time. Mandy, who are we going to talk about next time?
Our next episode is going to be about the group dynamics. And it's going to be chock full of all kinds of amazing Succession moments that we love so much. Because really, when the group members come together and they're interacting with each other, that's when it really gets exciting and funny and interesting. So we're going to see the Sharks, and that's going to be, Jerry and Hugo and Frank, right? And we're also going to be talking more about the presidential candidates and that group. So there's more people that we're going to pull in and talk about the group dynamics of the characters on Succession.
Well, I always look forward to it. It was great talking about Tom again. I'm looking forward to talking about all those folks next time.
And thanks for listening or watching. Bye-bye.
Tell them to fuck off.